Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today is Thursday, July 31st, 2025. And for our poem of the day today, we will be reading from Elizabeth Bishop. And this poem, which is called In the Waiting Room, was the first poem in her collection Geography 3, which, as far as I know Elizabeth Bishop, that's what I know her from, is having read that collection. And I think that collection is generally read and appreciated as not only her best work, but one of the better collections of American poetry in the 20th century. And so we'll be reading that poem. It is, I think, 99 lines long across 5 stanzas, but the lines are rather short. And because her style is very narrative and very focused on the scrutiny of details, I think that it doesn't feel quite as heavy as something like The Heart Crane from yesterday. But I'll read it now and let you decide. So this is In the Waiting Room by Elizabeth Bishop from 1971. In Worcester, Massachusetts, I went with Aunt Consuelo to keep her dentist's appointment and sat and waited for her in the dentist's waiting room. It was winter. It got dark early. The waiting room was full of grown-up people, Arctics and overcoats, lamps and magazines. My aunt was inside what seemed like a long time, and while I waited, I read the National Geographic I could read, and carefully studied the photographs. The inside of a volcano, black and full of ashes, then it was spilling over in rivulets of fire. Osa and Martin Johnson, dressed in riding breeches, laced boots, and pith helmets. A dead man slung on a pole. Long pig, the caption said. Babies with pointed heads, wound round and round with string. Black, naked women, with necks wound round and round with wire, like the necks of light bulbs. Their breasts were horrifying. I read it right straight through. I was too shy to stop. And then I looked at the cover, the yellow margins, the date. Suddenly from inside came an "oh" of pain, and Consuelo's voice. Not very loud or long. I wasn't at all surprised. Even then I knew she was a foolish, timid woman. I might have been embarrassed, but wasn't. What took me completely by surprise was that it was me. My voice, in my mouth. Without thinking at all, I was my foolish aunt. We, were falling. Our eyes glued to the cover of the National Geographic, February 1918. I said to myself, 3 days and you'll be 7 years old. I was saying it to stop the sensation of falling off the round, turning world into a cold, blue-black space. But I felt, you are an I. You are an Elizabeth. You are one of them. Why should you be one too? I scarcely dared to look to see what it was I was. I gave a sidelong glance. I couldn't look any higher. At shadowy gray knees, trousers and skirts and boots and different pairs of hands lying under the lamps, I knew that nothing stranger had ever happened. That nothing stranger could ever happen. Why should I be my aunt? Or me? Or anyone? What similarities, boots, hands, the family voice I felt in my throat, or even the National Geographic and those awful hanging breasts held us all together or made us all just one? How, I didn't know any word for it, how unlikely. How had I come to be here, like them, and overhear a cry of pain that could have got loud and worse but hadn't? The waiting room was bright and too hot. It was sliding beneath a big black wave, another, and another. Then I was back in it. The war was on. Outside in Worcester, Massachusetts, were night and slush and cold, and it was still the 5th of February, 1918. All right. My first encounter with this poem, I had this sort of feeling of Was that it? I think I got it. Um, and what I realized then with that response, which I don't think obviously is the correct response with any poetry, because poetry should be read slowly and multiple times, was that I was focusing too much on the getting it, as though there was one sort of meaning or one sort of key that would unlock this poem. And there isn't. I don't think for any poem there is no x equals 4 and you got it and then you move along. But that reaction told me something about what I was expecting out of the poem, and it told me something that I think has recurred to me the other couple times that I've read this, which is its primary feature seems to be the narrative simplicity and the unrelenting kind of laser-like focus on everyday details, to the point that a first time reading it, you can be kind of tempted to look back and to try to pull out those details and extrapolate allusion or extrapolate assonance or consonance or anything like that. And I really think that they function more vividly as immersive pieces of imagery. Not that they're functioning as symbols, but that they're functioning as ways in which the reader can embody themselves in the scene that's being described, which I think is so important to this poem, because this poem attempts to answer the question, where were you when, or do you remember when you first became conscious of being a you or of being an I? And within that moment, a feeling that you are distinct from others, but also along with others, that you're sharing in some part of being alive on the planet at the same time. Some part of the experience of being a human. In this case, some part of the experience of being a woman. And that even though things are divided by National Geographic, by nations, by images, by the waiting room versus being in the operating room, that you have this moment where what seemed to be something that came from somebody else was something that you did. And that reveals that you didn't know something about yourself, and that there was something that was foreign to you that is now out of the world. And to think about it is to think about I as a subject a little bit removed from your immediate experience. The speaker says that she is 7 years old, brags about being able to read a little bit earlier precociously. And so, again, that suggests to me that this is kind of the moment of an awakening into a consciousness. Typically, that is just placed on around 7 years old, as when people can talk about their first memories, or the first sort of choices that they know they made that they were responsible for. And I'm really interested in how much of this is invented versus how much of this is a real memory. Just because I've often asked myself this question of, when did you realize you were a person, and when did you come into being that way? And I don't think I can have a moment like Bishop's speaker does here, but rather that I know there was a time at which it just had happened. And it seems to me a perfect setting that this is in a waiting room, because in waiting rooms, at least before we all had cellular devices and smartphones, there's a kind of suspension of time there. That's a holding space, but it's a place where time feels a little bit out of joint, and you are able to almost meditatively sit in the stillness and just be alone with a particular thought. And so there's a possibility for like a transference in that place, as mundane and tedious as it can be. But there's something lost now that we don't ever have to really sit and wait in the same way. And it makes me kind of lament moments like this that could come out of just kind of stray wanderings and not being focused or not being entertained, and just waiting. And so it made me think a little bit about What are some other waiting room type places that are in our world today or that are in my life? And I think that's the thought that I'm going to take away from the poem this morning, is creating more opportunities for myself to be in a waiting room and have some sort of transferred experience like this. So thank you for joining us. Have a spectacular Thursday, and peace be with all of you.